First of all, it's really an honor to be here, and I just want to tell a brief little story that I think highlights what this project is all about, what agriculture I think is going to be all about as we move forward. So, in March of 2020, I was sitting at my desk down in Anchorage, and I had gotten a phone call from one of my security folks that said that the governor of the state of Washington was contemplating shutting down the Port of Seattle. This was during the pandemic because people were getting sick. And I said to myself, you know, at that moment, you say to yourself, yeah, things are not as certain as you once thought they were. As a matter of fact, that was the beginning of the supply chain issues that we're experiencing here today. And you realize you're at the end of the supply chain. It wasn't just agriculture products and food products, but it was all the PPE and everything else that we were importing into the state of Alaska. As a state, when I say we, I'm not necessarily saying people standing here, but as a state, you end up becoming complacent, relying on supply chains that you think are never going to fail. And the fact of the matter is, you're actually fragile. And when you're at the end of the food chain and you're at the end of the supply chain, you're even in bigger trouble. So even though we're the land of the free, the home of the brave, the state of Alaska, and I'm sincere when I say that, I came up here in 1983 from Pennsylvania because I wanted to come to Alaska, and I've stayed ever since. Lived in rural Alaska for 20 years. My wife's from the Kobuk River, et cetera, et cetera. The last couple of years have taught me a tremendous amount. And the fact of the matter is, food security as well as energy security, but food security is catapulted to the front because if you don't have food, you have nothing. And if you're relying on others, you almost have nothing because you're at the beck and call and you're at the will of others that are shipping food to you. So when you look at Alaska, the fact of the matter is we used to have a lot of farms here. The University of Alaska was started as an agricultural mining school, I think, in 1915. So the idea, the dream that Alaska could feed itself has always been there. I think we just got caught up in the fact that you could get a lost liter gallon of milk out of state of Washington and Walmart for $3. And we kind of fell for that. And right now, I think we import about 90% of our food, and that's a precarious position to be in at any time. And so what we're doing is, this is representative, this particular project here is representative of what we can do and what we can be. We believe that Alaska can feed itself. We believe Alaska has the know-how. People standing here in front of us right now. We certainly have the land. We have the water unlike any other state. We have 3 times the water of any other state in the country, including Michigan, which has Lake Michigan. Our fresh water is tremendous. Our climate is conducive to a whole host of crops that we never thought we could grow here. Things like barley, things like canola, potatoes, your root crops. I mean, the list goes on. The technology, for example, when it comes to greenhouses is phenomenal. The technology when it comes to, for example, powering your farm in terms of solar panels and wind, that technology has advanced tremendously over time. And so I think, many people could say we're 30 years behind the curve or 40 years behind the curve. We are. But if we don't really start in earnest now, it's still going to be years before we get to where we need to be. So the goal for the state is that we wake up one day sooner than later. I see some youngsters here, some babies, that by the time they're in their teenage years, the state of Alaska is not importing 90% of its food, but actually growing 90% of its food, and processing 90% of its food, and shipping 90% of its food to people within the state of Alaska. So that's really the goal. We're going to talk about a couple things here today in terms of how the state can help. The state can certainly help with infrastructure. The land is part of it, but also we're having conversations about co-ops, etc., because there may be processes, there may be machines, equipment, and so forth that individuals can't afford themselves, and we get that, but there's a way to co-op things too. There's a way to share machinery, there's a way to share things that can make a growing concern actually work. So I have a whole speech here, but I didn't want to read it because I didn't want to put you people to sleep. But I wanted to tell you what was really the turning point, I think, for the state. And as a matter of fact, the legislature has formed its own legislative food committee, which I think is incredibly important. And we at the state put together our own food security task force to make sure that not only that we have an agricultural base, but that those agricultural products get to other parts of the state. Because you could have earthquakes, you could have volcanic eruptions, you could have floods that make it difficult to send food or to feed parts of our state. But we're looking at doing a food security approach as well as improving our agricultural processes. And so we're always open for feedback, and I'm sincere when I say that. I was talking to people here just a minute ago, and I said in 1989 I was all excited. I was out in rural Alaska, out by Nome, as a teacher, and I just won 160 acres in Gersel River. Was thrilled to death. It was always my dream to have a farm. So I went over there, and I went through the process for 3 days of staking the corners, talking to locals, finding out what I had to do, and I realized that back then the regs were pretty onerous. The regs were really difficult, and I was going to end up spending $100,000 to meet the needs of getting my free land. And so with that, I had continually had conversations with folks throughout the years about making the process of being a farmer less onerous and doing everything the state can to de-risk farming. De-risking farming, getting roads in, getting electricity in, making sure that we have conversations about the co-ops that will actually work, looking at different types of loan programs. And so that's what we're going to be doing. Is it done? Is it all in place at this moment today as we speak? No. No, it's not. But there have been a lot of improvements over the years. But I think the most important thing, and I think why this is going to be a day that we don't turn back from, is that pandemic, I think, taught us a lot about a lot of things. And if you don't have food, you really have nothing. If you don't have energy, you don't have anything. You don't have anything either. And so we're going to work at making sure that we are food secure. And that's going to be with your help. And we're going to make sure that we're energy secure so we never have to rely on anybody again. That if something, God forbid, happens in Washington, D.C. or state of Washington at the Port of Seattle, it'll be a newspaper clipping as opposed to have a detrimental impact on the state of Alaska. So with that, what's our next thing on our agenda, Dave? So I don't want to just keep yapping here.
So we can announce the co-op.
Was it 800 or was it 1?
1.
Okay, 1. So Dave's going to help me with we got an announcement to make. So one of the things we're doing at the request of some farmers in the state of Alaska is we've seeded $1 million so that we can buy grain, barley, from some farmers, so that when we do that, we can then have some hog farmers get that grain to grow hogs in the state of Alaska, so that it's our meat here. And it's my understanding, we can have folks talk to this that are intimately involved in that operation, but those hogs, once butchered and sold here in the state of Alaska, will not only be better meat for us, because as we were talking about earlier, we're not shipping it for hours and it's not coming across the country, even across the world, but it's here in Alaska, and it's probably going to end up being cheaper given what's happening with the transportation costs and the feed costs as well. So do we have anybody who wants to talk just a little bit about the details of that operation? You want to do it?
Yep.
Here we go.
Thank you, Governor. Really appreciate you coming up here today. So for the last 3 years, we've been looking at how we can improve what we're doing at the Division of Agriculture. And so we had a little problem with our slaughterhouse facilities, and we had one shut down, and I'm like, well, that's not acceptable. That's not going to work. So we started on a year-long program of helping the North Pole plant stay open, helping the Delta plant, but we had a little problem with the Palmer plant facility. And so a gentleman who is now standing there next talking to the governor decided to go even further into debt, and he bought the Palmer facility. And so I've been working with Todd, and I've met Zach at the Delta Co-op. And what we realized as we were trying to scale up and help them make this work was we have some cash flow issues. You know, the co-op doesn't have the money to get all the things we need and to pay for the product when it comes in. And we're like, how do we make this work? How do we leverage and use the state's resources to support our local agriculture? And so what we realized is, you know, we have to continue to get people to buy and sell on contracts so they know that, hey, this is the price you're going to pay and this is the price you're going to get. And so Todd came down here about 6 months ago and was trying to figure out how he can get feed for a year, because he's scaling up his operation. And if you've got 200 sows, you need to make sure you have feed for 200 sows. That's kind of a big deal. And so we're talking to the co-op, and they're like, we don't have the money to guarantee the grain that'll be purchased. And I looked at Todd and I said, well, that's kind of the state's responsibility to help you guys make sure we do this. So I went to the governor and talked to folks in the legislature, and we got some funding. And so today, as the governor announced, we're starting a new program, and this the purchasing of working the funding for the grain is a pilot program of what we're going to call our co-op support program. And so what we realize is if we're going to do this agriculture, if we're going to do agriculture around the state, we're an independent group, but we have to work together, and that means we have to cooperate. And so the co-ops that have failed in the last couple of years, when I went back and looked at it, it was because of capital and professional management. And so if we can help people come together and give them the resources so they can work together to, buy one combine and everybody works together, so that works. So that we have the resources in Delta, and we're bringing the grain in. Now, why is this important? Why did we start with grain? $200 a ton to ship it in. It's almost the price of the grain. It will put our people out of business. That's not acceptable. We got people going, and so we're going to go from producing at your facility from a couple hundred to 6,000, somewhere in that range.
About 3,600.
3,600 to 6,000. So we're going to double. And not only that, because that we have local ownership of the plant, then they're going to be buying from all the other local people. So it's not just one operation, but we need the anchors, and then all the other people that are out there, they can come in too. So with the Nantucket, how does that fit into what we're doing? We've got 27 lots. They're out there for sale. Some people are asking, why are we doing this early? One, I wanted the local people who are going to know about this to be able to go out there and look, and we can figure out how to do this. They're sized from 21 acres to a couple that are 300 acres. Why are they smaller? Normally the state doesn't sell less than 40 acres, but they're smaller because we want people to be able to get in. And this program and project is going to be designed with phases to where you buy a small parcel, behind it land's going to be held for later. You're successful, you can buy more land behind it. So what's going to take us a couple of years from now to go ahead and redo the plan, but we've got the soil scientists from the NRCS, I think they're here today. They're doing a soil study of the first 30,000 acres. So there they are in the back. So we're going to have data. We talked to the governor, we're going to put in some wells. We're going to make sure we have the water. We're going to get the data so that people can come in and they can design an economic unit that's going to work. We want this to support the community. We want it to support the tribal interests. So everybody we've talked for 2 years, we'll be talking for 2 years and then for 30 years. How do we make this part of the community? And that the governor's been really clear is Alaska has to support its own people and agriculture. So this is something that we are really pleased. Over the last 2 years, we've got about $20 million focused on this project and agriculture in the state. The one thing that I do want to say for the folks that came and talked to us from Kobe last year, we have current areas that we didn't put in the electricity and we didn't put in the roads. And we're working with the legislature to go back and fix that infrastructure need there as well. So when we get done, believe it or not, we'll end up with a couple 100,000 acres of cropland. We have 2 million acres that we're using for reindeer herding. We have a lot more agriculture in rural Alaska than people know. And so what we're doing is taking and we're leveraging the local resources and we're growing it out to where, as the governor said, we can start supporting and feeding ourselves. But when you look at this project and others, what sells is what we call green agriculture. And as I tell the USDA folks, and somebody was complaining about regulations. Well, their regulations don't work for us. I had the U.S. Secretary get mad at me because I told him that. We have not screwed up our land. We have not screwed up our state, and we're really going to try not to do that. So we keep the invasives and we keep the pests out of here, and we don't have to use the pesticides. And so we're building our more robust invasives program. We're doing things so that, as the governor was telling me, he was talking to some folks in the lower 48, and was like, we don't have to make it organic. We start there. We start there. And so I'm pretty excited that, we're going to try to do smaller sizes even than in the future. We had a bill that the governor sponsored in the legislature that would allow us to go under 20 acres. Unfortunately, and with a little broader range of uses of that land, it didn't pass. We'll look at going back to the legislature again on that. So as the governor said, we've handed out our cards. We come out and I actually was talking to a reporter who was saying that we hadn't taken feedback, and I go, we're going to our second event at the location where we've brought all the agencies. I hope you understand that we have all the state and federal agencies for people to come in and talk to in one place. That hadn't happened in 20 years. Some of these agencies hadn't got together in a while with us. So those are the kind of things that the governor's asked me to work on, and we're doing. So, Todd, you or Zach have anything to say about how we got here?
Like the director said, I don't know, it's December, January, went in.
I'm going to ask you to keep it, yeah.
Okay. We had purchased the Palmer slaughter facility back in November. We brought in to Doug and says, this is what fertilizer costs are going to be this next year. And it was enough to scare most farmers. And so I went to the director and said, I see a problem on the horizon here. Guys aren't going to just put grain in their bin and wait for it to get sold at these fertilizer costs, tie up that much money. They're just not going to plant. I foresee a disaster in the making, here in 6 months. And kind of went to work and talked back and forth, and agriculture can't grow in this state without the feed, without the animals. You can't bring animals in to start a herd, whether it beef or pork. You've got to make sure the feed is here. Availability of it. What the director and the governor has done here is it's monumental. It's staved off of the disaster that I think was pending this fall by this barley purchase program, and it helps all Alaskans. It puts a reserve, and by having a reserve in feed in the state, it creates a reserve in live animals sitting out on the farms, which this big merry-go-round. I mean, I look at pigs in the barn and I say, this is food storage here. It's a live animal. If somebody needs to eat tomorrow, I can get a pig in, get processed, and they can eat tomorrow. If the ship breaks down March breaks down coming out of Seattle, we've all experienced this, going to the grocery store and saying, where's the meat? It just could not get here. So I want to thank them. This is a big step. We can move forward. 2 years from now, I expect some large growth here in the state. So thank you.
So what's going to be next after this?
We're going to have her to visit with folks.
Okay. So we're going to wrap this part up here, but just very important. Some will view this potentially as just, jawboning or whatever, but we want to build this future together. And as I mentioned to Dave, I gave him my experiences back to 1989. I know a lot of other people have too, but you got to let the Department of Ag, DNR know, and us know what it is that you believe would help with farming in Alaska. That was just one example. There are folks that we've talked to that would like to see smaller parcels. There are folks that don't want to use any pesticides or herbicides on their land. I think that's a great idea. There's going to be more and more market for that type of food in state and potentially out of state. But you got to give us your ideas. Yelling at Dave sometimes works, but not necessarily. He actually has pretty decent ears. And if you give us the input and the feedback, we're going to do the best we can. But just keep in mind, there are going to be folks that want 5-acre farms with 0 pesticides, and there are going to be other people that need 1,000-acre farms to be able to do canola or barley or whatever. We're going to have to work together because Alaska is a diverse state. So nonetheless, I think we can get to where we want to be. Just have to have the conversations constantly on this. So anyway, it's great to be here. It's great to see you folks. It's great to see future farmers. And that's the other thing we're going to be working on over time. So a lot of the farmers are getting old. A lot of farms are being sold off because there's no one to take their places. One of the things we're talking about doing is getting younger folks interested in farming and helping to de-risk their possible dream of having a farm by making it so, again, it's not so onerous in terms of debt, machinery, capital, etc., that we can get younger folks into farming because we're going to need them. So we're looking at this top, bottom, in and out, all the way around. Your feedback's important. But again, we've got to build a farming a community in the state of Alaska with systems that start from seed all the way through processing, all the way through shipment, etc. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we need your help. So with that, I want to thank all you guys for being here. We'll be here for about 20 or 30 minutes, and I wish you nothing but the best on the farm selection, the land that you select, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that you're a success. So thank you very much. Hey, Fred, where are you?
Right there.
Come on over, Fred. And John, where are you?
Right there.
Come on, you can't hide in the crowd. See, that's part of the problem with these guys hide. I can't hide in the crowd. These guys can hide in the crowd. Anyway, these guys are going to tell you who they are, and they're on our food security task force, and they're just going to talk very briefly on this and let you know that this is something that we're going to have in place for some time to get us to where we need to be. Want to say a few words, Fred?
Hi, my name's Fred Villa, former University of Alaska Associate Vice President for Workforce Programs. Also been involved with Cooperative Extension, FFA, and 4-H, and really excited about being part of the Food Security Task Force. Agriculture is important. It's been something that I grew up with. My first jobs growing up in South Dakota were on the farm as a hired hand, and coming up here, started growing livestock as really a family farm project, and all our kids were involved with it, and really involved also with the food security from a maritime industry as well. But agriculture is at the heart of what we do in our family, and we're always concerned, and particularly now with the Alaska grown products that are just bursting into the marketplace. That's something that we focus on. We look for Alaska grown first, whether it's milk, the barley products, the meat products, or others. So really excited to join it, and thank you, Governor, for the opportunity.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Anderson. So I am the co-chair of the Food Security Task Force with Commissioner Sandy, the Department of Commerce. And our goal with this task force, and I guess a little about me, I'm a farmer. We have a couple acres, and we're able to produce 30 plus beef a year. That's calves, mothers. We run a bull. We're doing everything, and also we run a pork operation. We're only doing it on a couple acres, so some of these smaller plots, it can be done, and it can be done successfully. But what it does is it takes coordination and cooperation. We don't produce our own hay and grain, but we buy a lot from our fellow Alaskans. We keep all that money in state. So we know it can work, and it's just going to take that cooperation. It's everyone pitching in to make the state do better. But a little bit more about the task force. We're going to come up with a lot of really good ideas. We have a very, very diverse group of people. You heard from Fred, Todd's on it, and there's a wide range of experience. We have mariculture experts. We have greenhouse experts. So it's not just, beef and cattle, or it's not just beef and pork. It's everyone, because we know how diverse this state is. We know what we can do, and there's so much opportunity out there right now, but it's just going to take people bringing their expertise and coming together, because last time something like this has been done, it's been 15 years, and but luckily this time around, I think we have a governor who really supports agriculture and is going to take advantage of everything we bring forward to take it to the next step, because there's a lot of things in these reports over the last 30, 40 years that maybe Alaska hasn't lived up to. But I do want to thank my wife. She is a third generation farmer here. Her grandfather owns cattle and owns farm land out in Delta. So she has that experience, and where she started was in 4-H. We took her 4-H program, her project of raising beef cattle. So a lot of these younger kids to then turn it into a farm, to turn it into a business that's now producing, and we're selling all the way across the state and shipping meat from, out into the villages all the way down to Southeast. So there is a lot of opportunities, and we just are looking forward to the next couple months to develop a plan. And like we said, it's going to take input. So please contact us for that, because this has huge opportunities for everyone. So thank you, Governor, for putting together this task force. And thank you, Dave, for having us here today.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. We'll be here for about another half hour, but everything will be here the rest of the day. Talk to the staff, ask questions, get your brochures. We've got some brochures out. Thanks again. Take care.
Whoa.